Welcome to Health and Safety Conversations. Here's your host, Tom Bourne.
And welcome to Health and Safety Conversations. I'm your host, Tom Bourne, and with me today is the amazing Ryan Alexiou. Ryan, how are you?
Good, thank you, and thanks very much for having me. Happy to be here.
Beautiful. Ryan, what part of the world are you based in at the moment?
The fresh, sunny Gold Coast at the moment. It's a pretty terrible day today. Nice, sunny, mid-20s, spring. Where else would you rather be?
Yeah. And you do have those terrible beaches there that no one ever visits as well, right?
Well, that's right, and I'm about 500 meters from it at the moment, and it's a good one in between meetings when you need some downtime. Just go for a bit of a stroll. So it's a terrible place.
Yeah, I can imagine. Do you ever feel the waves calling you when you're in the middle of a meeting or a podcast where you're just going, "This is like root canal. I could rather go for a surf."
Plenty of times, trust me. I start doing the yes, right, okay, get a bit short in some of my sayings where I definitely the mind starts to wander to how good the surf is. But we try and keep it on track and not waste too much time. But yeah, it's a brilliant place here. Love it. I've always been here, and it's hard to leave.
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is. It's one of those little parts of paradise. Are you getting ready for the spring and summer hailstorms around about 4 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yeah, it's normally starts to creep in around November, December. It's funny. I always remember we haven't had too many of them in the last couple of years, but I always remember growing up. I grew up at a place called Mermaid Waters, which was beautiful on the canal, and we used to get the 5 o'clock thunderstorms roll through after really hot, humid days. So
Yeah.
we used to kind of eat dinner and watch the storms come through, and yeah, it's interesting how it works. But yeah, really fond memories of all that. But yeah, again, it's a beautiful place. Love it here.
Beautiful. Now, Ryan, I know a little bit about you from doing some research, but for those who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about you, your professional background, how you got into safety, and what you're currently up to?
I've been in the construction industry my whole life. Since I finished high school, I had a family friend of mine owned a tower crane business, and in year 12, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Did okay academically, but had a stint at uni and didn't really like it. But the family friend in year 12 said, "Why don't you come work for me on Saturdays, see what you think about construction, see if you're interested." And so I worked Saturdays for free for 7 or 8 months, and really enjoyed it. I liked how direct the people were, how real it all was. It was all a bit hectic and crazy. So for me, I kind of drew an affinity to it. So I started off scrubbing tower crane bolts as a workshop kind of labourer out of year 12, and worked my way up to workshop manager, and basically was responsible for all the cranes in and out, making sure we had all our commissioning documentation, and that kick-started my kind of foray into the construction world. So they ended up selling the business just prior to the GFC. Because I was seen as part of the family side of it, I was let go, and went into a labour hire arrangement where I was just labouring on construction sites trying to get a job. So I was doing some traffic control and pushing a broom around, and thinking back to those days, it was probably really good grounding, but it was a time that I was really not happy with where I was at and what I was doing. So it kind of built the foundation of how I am as a manager now, but I do look back fondly on the grounding it gave me. But for the best part of a couple of years was really trying to find my way and what I wanted to do, and ended up on a construction site called the Queensland Children's Hospital up here for Abbey Group, where I was doing traffic control, and they asked for some safety documents and some swims, and the business I was working for asked me just to pull them together for the project. And I submitted them to Abbey Group, and one of the foremen at the time, an English gentleman by the name of Andrew Herbert, grabbed me and said, "These are actually really good. Have you ever thought about getting into safety?" I hadn't, but they were paying a lot better than what I was on at the time. And it was better than traffic control. So I jumped at it, and I was on that children's hospital project for about 3.5 years with Abbey Group, and it was chaotic. It was pretty heavy. It was in Queensland history, folklore for EBA situations where we spent 11 weeks of not working when we were going through that time. But again, it was a really good grounding for me in the industry, in the safety profession, to get thrown in the deep end, work on the highest profile project in the state at the time by accident, but just worked with some extraordinarily good people who took me under their wing and showed me the ropes. So that was how I got into safety. So it evolved to moving on to regional executive, state manager roles with Hanson Yuncken, family-owned business, great people, and then into multiplex, where looking after some of the biggest projects in the state at the time, and with a team of 15 to 20 safety and training people, where I learned to get really strategic and build my craft in kind of an executive management role, which led me to where I am now with NextTrack. I'm the chief executive officer here. I never expected to be in this capacity, in this role, in a startup software ecosystem. But just for context, we're a real-time occupational health management platform. So there is an affinity and a synergy to my past of, I still see myself as a safety practitioner and professional, and I always will be that. So it's good that I can bring that to the business I'm at now, and solve health challenges around, at the moment, silica, really, where we're providing real-time monitors and a platform to really demonstrate to builders and subcontractors how effective implemented control measures are, and utilize my experience in my previous roles to then start to really drill down and educate and train people into higher order controls, so that we can protect people from the exposures they're getting now, and provide a healthy workforce. So I apologize for the long-winded answer to that, but it's interesting when you get asked about your journey, and you think back to some of those moments. It's things pan out the way they do that you never really planned for. But it's been a really interesting journey.
Yeah, no apology necessary. For most people, no one ever asks them about their history. They want to know about that 5-minute snapshot, but no one ever wants to say, where did you begin? And so as soon as you open the floodgates, people usually go, well, actually, I've been holding on to this story a whole life, and here you go. Yep. All right. Before we get into what you're currently doing, I now know who the culprit was, who was in charge of the lovely traffic around the children's hospital when it was being constructed. I must tell you, it might have been brilliant. I don't know enough about traffic control, but I can tell you, trying to get a child in and around that area you're right, years. I mightn't have said your name, Ryan, out loud, but I've certainly cursed whoever was in charge of it many times.
Yeah, we were never fan favourites there, and cyclists alike used to give us some interesting hand gestures on approach to us, but we were well trained to deal with that as part of our journey. But yeah, look, it's one of those things. I've got a lot of respect for the trade. Obviously, when you do it, you live a day in someone's shoes, and you appreciate what happens, and it's never easy, and everyone just thinks you're a high-paying person who's quite lazy, holding a pole in your hand, swinging it stop and slow. But it's there's a lot to it, and it's a high-risk environment, and you're the public face of a project. So how you interact with people is often their first experience with the project around it, and often no one really wants the project there. So
that's right.
So yeah, look, I hold my hand up for causing a lot of people grief in around Vulture Street for a few years there. But as I said, it was really good grounding for me. And again, it's things that you appreciate when you go into management roles, that it kind of is really good grounding for the people in around. How every little job is so important to the big picture of how an organization effectively does what it does.
Yeah. I was speaking to someone last year, and they were telling me that one of their traffic controllers on a fairly busy road they got a fish that got thrown out a window, which hit them in the face. And I went, that's not something you'd expect when you're filling out the hazards to expect as a traffic controller. Fish in face.
That's definitely a first one for me. I've had a few things thrown in the general direction, but a fish definitely isn't one of them. So yeah, it's I can picture the incident report and that process, how that all looks, and a few interesting queries.
Yeah.
It's a thankless job.
Yeah, it is. It is. All right. Other thing you talked about was cranes. Look, I've always loved big pieces of equipment, big pieces of plant, and it's always a wonder to me, how on earth do those cranes get built? Because it seems like there's one day you go past a site, there's no crane. The next day, or within a couple of days, the crane's fully up, and it's not a small thing to do. How does that actually happen?
Oh, they're magnificent machines, and for a kid who was pretty scared of heights, it was a quick, unique way to get over my fear. But they're in terms of process, there's a lot of work geotechnically to build a foundation for that crane, because they've got really high stands. So you've got essentially this freestanding tower in the air that sways backwards and forwards, plus it's got this twisting motion from when it spins around. So everything is really held up by the foundation of the tower crane. But yeah, they build a base tower and essentially tie that into the ground with a concrete slab, and then bolt these pieces of it's like a Lego set. They literally have it's called a tower, structural steel piece that essentially gets bolted together, and then they land the crane and or the machine deck and bolt that together, and then bolt together this great big jib at the front of it. Put a power pack on the back, which is all the engines, and hang a rope off it all, and then test it all. So it's a fine art. Those guys, the riggers that pull it together, are just absolute gems. No fear, those guys. They harness up at some obscene heights that any normal person would just have a heart attack thinking about climbing up. But they're brilliant machines, get put up really quickly. Typically in a day, they can freestand and have them up. But even more impressive is when they actually climb them. It's called a climbing frame on the crane, and it's got these hydraulic pins that lifts the whole crane up and leaves a space between the towers below it and the machine deck above. And then using a monorail, they pull in the next tower piece and then bolt it all together. And it's just a marvelous feat to watch those guys do it. It's super impressive machinery. And if anyone has 5 minutes to go and jump on YouTube and have a look at some of the videos around how it all gets done, it just blows my mind. It's so cool. And to be involved with all that in my career, I got a bit of a stint driving some of them as well, and it's just a powerful machine that's so impressive.
All right. Yeah, no, it's one of those things that I always go, how on earth? I mean, because they do so much work around high-rise construction, which is everywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and just the weights they can lift, you get some of the tower cranes out now that are lifting like 120-ton machines at 30 meters away. Just the engineering behind it is so cool. But yeah, it's an impressive bit of kit that is stock standard on every job now, and again hasn't structurally innovated in a long time, but there's plenty of innovation going with the systems that they use now for managing the tower cranes.
Yeah. All right. Tell us about NextTrack. No, I'll let you. I won't even put the question. Just tell us about NextTrack.
Yeah, so we're trying to solve the problem of occupational lung diseases right now, and for us, we're trying to utilize some really sophisticated real-time monitors to start to feed back performance data around how effective control measures are for those health kind of activities, or hazards, I should say. It was always a case that I think the natural evolution of the profession was always that the physical safety controls were always in place and done pretty well to a good degree. But the health part often got missed. But COVID fixed that problem for the industry and brought us all down to earth around actually protecting the individual as well. And obviously, there's been a lot documented around silica and engineered stone and those industries and the effects it's having on people for a few years now. And so for us, it was an experience of utilizing hygiene in previous roles, and seeing the value that brought to what we were doing, but trying to solve that problem at scale was really cost prohibitive, and often just took a very long time to get a finger on the pulse of what we were doing and how effective it was. So NextTrack was founded by Paul and Kristen Brennan, and they'd been around for a few years. And I'd actually road tested on one of our projects and done a trial around. We were doing some jackhammering of piles on one of our projects here on the Gold Coast, and saw that what we were doing, wasn't really managed well enough. We thought we had everything in place, but we put these monitors on and we realized we were getting really high exposures, and the controls could have been a lot better. So I got super interested, and in the end, the more I spoke to Paul, the more we started to get a feel that we could work together. So I wanted to not just help my previous business, I wanted to help the industry to solve that problem at scale. So yeah, I've been with the business for 18 months, but the business has been around for about 4.5 years now, and we're on about 80 odd projects and scaling up from there. But we've picked up our first few projects in Melbourne now, and we're really starting to build out a repeatable process for a number of activities that we're able to demonstrate this is what good looks like with some validated data that it gives some really good certainty for construction companies, and also for workers, that if these controls are in place, I know I'm protected. So that's really what we're trying to do. And yeah, now let's start scaling up and improve our platform and the reporting analytics side that we're doing. And yeah, we're enjoying it. It's a startup ecosystem. I wouldn't recommend it for a lot of people, but it's a hell of a ride.
Yeah. I can imagine. All right. Real-time dust monitoring. It's an interesting concept, because I've spoken to someone who deals with a lot of airborne lung diseases, shall we say, and they were saying that they believe the current monitoring was, you do the monitoring, you take out the filter gets analysed, and then it brings back data, but that opportunity's gone. Real-time monitoring, something a bit different than that?
Yeah, it is. It's very different at the moment. So the example you're talking about is the traditional hygiene model, which to really understand compliance against workplace exposure standards is a must legislatively, and it's taking physical samples, sending it to a lab, getting reports back to validate that is a silica dust that someone's been exposed to, and how much of that has occurred over the course of an extrapolated day. So it's an important piece. Where where real time fits is the ability to test controls. So I see them, the two different systems, as two sides of one coin. I think gravimetric analysis is here to stay and is an essential piece of the cog to prove and demonstrate legislatability that something works. But real time gives you that instantaneous feedback that you can't get from the traditional hygiene model. So, real time monitors can pick up all dust, which is great. It struggles to extrapolate out the silica content, but that's where our platform really gets smart, where we can start to input some of the SCS data and really fine tune what that looks like in terms of the silica content. But where it really starts to give that instantaneous feedback of, I've got no control potentially in place, and here's what my exposure looks like. I've now put a control in place, and I can visibly, in 1 minute averages or 15-minute averages, see a reduction in exposure and go, oh, geez, that is working. What else can I do? Can I now add some RPE to it? Can I add some extraction, HEPA filtrated systems to that, and go for, my view of as low as reasonably practicable exposures? Then between the two systems of gravimetric and real time, then the industry has a really good snapshot on, I've got a report that demonstrates that I can comply and be below an exposure standard, but here's how I'm performing right now in terms of those controls. They're maintained, and I've got something that proves that they're actually effective here and now and not causing secondary exposure concerns. So it's the model moving forward, and industry is starting to really understand its place and how it fits into the ecosystem that, probably 2 years ago wasn't there.
Yeah. Commercial construction sites still highly unionized?
Very. And, that won't change anytime soon. It's an important part of the ecosystem, the labor movement. So I think unions understand and see it as a good thing. Anything that is, reinforcing good controls and reducing exposures to workers is a good thing. So I think everyone's still in a perspective of, let's see how this pans out, because at the moment it is new, and as always with new things, there's a learning curve, and industry starting to see that happen. We're having discussions with unions at the moment, and they definitely see it as a part of the toolkit that is here to stay. But again, it's understanding what it is and seeing the value proposition. So again, it's going to be a 5-year journey on that framework of everyone understanding how it fits in. But we're 12 months, 18 months into that, and we've made some really good progress in the education world.
Yeah. The only reason I asked that was I would think that it might actually solve a few issues almost immediately. If there's been a complaint and the union delegate comes up and says, blah, 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 this is not effective, people are complaining about the dust, real-time monitoring might just take the heat out of the situation if you're able to demonstrate, well, this is the exposure that we have currently right now. I think that might actually help, I don't know, the whole workplace.
I think you're 100% on the money. Like it's quantifying something that at the moment can't be quantified fairly quickly. It's understanding what it's utilized for, and again, it needs to be utilized to test how effective those controls are. So to be able to come into a workplace, potentially on the back of a complaint, going, the workers aren't quite sure, but we need to test that, and for an organizer to come to site, take a snapshot of what is or isn't happening in a fairly quick point of time, just diffuses or resolves the situation for something to happen. So again, it's a point of action to do something. So we only see that as a benefit, that potentially waiting 4 weeks for a report, you can resolve it on the spot, and as I said, diffuse the situation. So for us, we only see it as a good thing.
Yeah, excellent. You talked about jackhammering. What other construction activities generate significant amounts of dust?
There's plenty around. We see pretty consistent evidence around shotcreting as really high exposure elements. Floor preparation, often when they're doing floor grinding, they have some really good controls, but we find around the maintenance of filtration systems that those guys use, often they're only kind of doing the 12-month minimum maintenance requirement, but those things get clogged up pretty quick. So we find that the controls there, but not maintained. So we find pretty high exposures to those areas or that activity. Blockies with their block saws, tilers in particular, when they're cutting tiles in bathrooms, because they're often in an enclosed environment, we start to get a feel for some really high exposures. So they're probably the indicative, I guess, on the higher end of activities that we're consistently getting feedback on, to try and improve controls for those activities. So they're the consistent ones at the moment. But yeah, jackhammering is another one as well. But the good part is with jackhammering, there's some really good engineering controls around plant that you can use, i.e. excavators instead, and some pile croppers and things like that you can just actually take the human element out of it. So for us, it's reinforcing those high order controls. And if you can delete the person out of it, then that's just a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to be that you're focused around the construction industry. Any thoughts about pushing into maybe the resource industry where dust is, well, it's a problem everywhere I've ever been. There's been dust issues on mine sites.
Yeah, look, strategically right now, we've kind of got blinkers on from a business perspective because it's easy for us to go do a number of myriad of sectors. But for us, it's trying to prove up the model and get some interesting data really quick and demonstrate our capabilities. So we definitely are heading to the resources sector, whether that's 12 months away or a little bit longer. We'll wait and see, but we see the application definitely in the mining sector. We see it in manufacturing, where particularly around obviously the stone benchtop, but areas like plasterboard manufacture, concrete batching plants, those type of industries, quarrying, where there's definitely applications for what we're doing. We're having some conversations with people at the moment around asset management. So, where a shopping center may be getting a refurb or a commercial tower with a refurb, hospital environments where they've got to have dust-free environments. There's a myriad of applications for what we're doing. So we've got one eye on the future of getting to those sectors. But for us right now, it's about proving out the model, demonstrating our capacity and capability, and then we'll go really hard into those strategic sectors and start building out our portfolio.
Yeah, I would say that in manufacturing, and you mentioned like kitchen bench tops and that, this would be I would suggest one of the most ideal things we have, because you've got the real-time monitoring. You can see how effective your extraction fans are, etc., in real time, and as opposed to perhaps just hoping. Because speaking to a few people, they're talking about for those kitchen bench tops that exposure of 3 years or less is enough to basically give you silicosis, which it never used to be like that, obviously.
Correct. And acute silicosis now in that stone benchtop industry, we're hearing stories of some people after like months of exposure having silicosis. So for us, having something there that is giving an instant feedback loop with an alert system of stop what you're doing, the exposures are too high over a 15-minute window, that's just gold for any business. So for us, it's as I said, it's an area we want to build into. It's an area that needs support, and for the workers there, it's peace of mind that the controls I'm using either A, aren't working and I need to stop and improve it, or B, it's that assurance of I'm comfortable because I know that if I'm doing this, I've got this monitor here telling me that I'm okay. So we just see it as an obvious answer that it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. You talked earlier about being able to set the filters to pick up particular particles like silica. Could it also be programmed to pick up other particles like, I don't know, airborne coal dust?
It can. Some of the real-time monitors out there are quite sophisticated. So I know a lot of them have been used for like smoke particulate, diesel particulate. There's a range of bespoke monitors out there now that can do these varying range of hazards. Vapors from epoxy resins and things like that. Volatile organic compounds. The investment globally in this space has been significant over the last few years, and it's only getting better. The sensors are getting better. They're getting smaller, which makes them more movable, and and then the communications behind them is really sophisticated. So it's only going to get better. It's only going to get and I might touch on a bit later, but more connected in terms of IoT with Internet of Things and how you can connect monitor to control, and it starts to really get some smarts and start automating scale up, scale down of controls. That's when we really get value. So there's a wide range of monitors that are identifying a wide range of hazards that workers are being exposed to day in, day out. That for a lot of businesses, they're dealing with the grenade that's in front of them and trying to resolve that immediate problem. But it should be on their strategic plans to understand what these health hazards are and really putting some good structures in place.
And I think I'd be correct in saying that regulator and public concerns over dust, they're not going to go away. These are things that are now wired into our safety beliefs and controls are necessary. I would expect that in the next few years there will be more air quality demands or harsher air quality controls actually required by regulators and the public opinion pushing these things. So it's something that businesses really do have to basically get on top of. All right.
100%. And just to add to that, like right now, federal government has got the Dust Disease Task Force well up and running. They've been running for a couple of years now, and some of the recommendations are starting to flow through where, there's a registry for exposures for workers. And it, at the moment, silica dust is that step into it, but it's not the only hazard. So I see the government going, we've learned a lot from this silica dust side of things and the effects it's had. What else is around the corner? And it's only going to evolve more and more. So the earlier businesses start to look around the corner of all that stuff and get ahead of what regulators are doing, the better off they'll be.
Yeah. The fact that in your state, lovely Queensland, it's basically providing free chest X-rays for people who've been involved in the resources industries tells me that they believe there's going to be significant issues down the track, and they're just trying to get ahead of the curve there.
Yeah, you're 100% right. They're doing that twofold. It's how big's the problem and how many are affected. So it's the start. And they did the same thing up here with the stone benchtop industry. They put every worker through health monitoring to understand the impact, and it was something like 25 to 30% of workers had silicosis. So the mining sector is going through the same thing. And from a construction perspective, there's a code of practice that came out this year and same requirements around health monitoring, because the government doesn't understand the scope of the problem, but health monitoring provides that extent. So it's only going to get more structured, more rigid, stronger penalties, and it's a real issue.
Yeah. We had Curtin University a couple of years ago put out a lovely report on what they believed the silicosis problem was, and they estimated then that in our lifetime we'd have 100,000 people diagnosed with silicosis, which it's not just a workplace issue. This starts to be a public health issue when you're talking about those numbers of people who are, no offense, filling up our hospitals, and that when they don't actually have to be there. It's a significant community issue, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's terrible numbers, and you're right, it's a massive burden on our public system. So, as I said, it's something that regulators are now being quite strong on because they can see the follow-on impact to it. And I'd hate to see some of the figures that we've paid out in workers' compensation claims in Queensland, in particular, over the last 3-4 years from the mining and stone benchtop sectors. But imagine if we'd instead utilise that on the positive side of things, and utilise that to encourage good controls. So it's a terrible impact that this isn't new. Silica, hazards have been known for hundreds of years. It's been in our legislative environments for a very long time. So it's pretty disappointing we're in this circumstance, but at least something is being done right now. But it's a terrible burden.
Yeah. All right. Just, you don't have to answer this at all, but I just was wondering, with the use of real-time monitoring and current control measures that are available, do you believe that it's still necessary to ban all manufactured stone benchtops being imported and used in Australia?
Look, personally, I'd say if good controls were put in place to manage it, my answer would be no, but it's just not a reality. So I feel where we're at right now as an industry that they've probably really got no other choice but to do it. So it's a reflection of how slow the learning curve has been. So I know that basically the importation side of things is going to stop, but again, there's a backlog, for example, of stone benchtop in the country right now for about 10 years worth of supplies. So it's not going away anywhere, and it's going to take a while for this to flow through in terms of the actual, ban on these products. But I really see no other way forward at the moment other than to do it. So I think it's a done deal. And it's a sad reality, because if everyone did the good things well, then a lot of things wouldn't happen. But it's just a reflection of the industry.
Yeah. We're just commencing building something over here in lovely Perth. And it surprised me, because one of the big sales pitches we got pushed was about the lovely manufactured stone bench tops that were going to be put in the bathrooms and the kitchen. And I was like, have you not actually heard anything in the last 12 months or so about this?
Yeah.
But it's still there. And the interesting thing about this is, as was pointed out to me by the other day, was even if we ban and stop using it, tomorrow, the issue will be with us for probably another generation or two, as people demolish and knock down kitchens and et cetera, renovate. There'll be people cutting and smashing these things up, and the dust will then be in the next generation, much as it did with asbestos when people were doing do it yourself. So
you're 100% on the money. It's not going anywhere just yet. It's you're right. The asbestos side of things was banned 30 odd years ago plus, and we're still dealing with the impact of it now. I know, again, from a Queensland perspective, the government's having a massive push on asbestos and management and removal processes now. It's not going anywhere. And I remember being in a previous role when I was at Multiplex, we were doing tenders for projects. And this was back in 2018, 2019, when we were, we've educated developers saying, we can price this product for you and put it in place, but here's what the impact of doing that will have for your whole of life implications, and here's how big the problem is. And there was plenty of developers that looked at it and said, you know what, we'll pay the premium because we don't want that legacy issue. And some of the blue chip clients did do that, but there was plenty of people that went for the poor performance standard you get from a stone benchtop, an engineered stone benchtop versus a traditional marble granite or whatever it may be. We want the lowest number, and we still want it. So again, there's a lot of economics behind it, but it's a legacy item that, you're right, when we're demolishing places or refurbing, or it's a latency condition that someone has to deal with in the future, and we're just kicking the can down the road. So it's here to stay for a while now, and we've just got to have some good processes around how we manage it.
Okay. All right, on something completely different. Gold Coast United.
Yeah.
How is the lovely what do you guys call it? Do you guys still call it football? How is football on the Gold Coast?
Football on the Gold Coast is pretty good at the moment. We're just kind of winding up our season. So we got about a week or 2 weeks ago, and we're done for the year. But I'm a football tragic, so I can't get away from it. But right now, as we stand, I'm in submission phase for the national second division. So we're having a play at trying to be in the new national tier where we can eventually be an A-League club again. Gold Coast United was once an A-League club under Clive Palmer when he owned the club, and we've kind of reinvented ourselves as a community club over the last 5 years, but we've got aspirations to get back to that level we were at. So it's what I would say is my full-time job, and then I've got a full-time job on the side. But no, I love it. It's the game's given me so much, and it's me trying to give back now.
Yeah, absolutely. Women's World Cup. How big a kick for football of all male or female football in Australia? How big a kick has that been for the code?
It's been generational. Honestly, we've been planning with the governing body, and I do some work to support the governing body as well. We've been planning this for 3-4 years, and honestly, I don't think any of us really predicted how on board the country would get with the Women's World Cup. I was fortunate enough to go to the Australia-France game in the quarterfinal where we won the penalty shootout, and that was just the most electric feeling watching a game of any code ever. So, just to try and quantify, I coach a group of 8-year-olds, and at training, we were doing some shooting exercises, and I've got one kid who's going, watch me, I'm Lionel Messi trying to shoot. And I had another kid go, look at me, I'm Sam Kerr. So I never would have thought in my lifetime something like that would come from an 8-year-old kid. But as I said, it's been a generational event that we've got plans to really take advantage of for the next 10, 15, 20 years, and obviously putting ourselves out there for a Men's World Cup in after 2030 is part of that picture. But I feel that the highest TV ratings for anything ever just speaks volumes of how on board everyone got. So we're going to have those 8-year-olds coming through that all teach their kids, and it's set up not just football, but I think women's sport holistically as well. It's just catapulted it into the stratosphere. So so proud of what we've achieved with it all, but it's how we leverage that now, which is the real challenge.
Yeah, absolutely, because Australians do tend to have a short sporting memory where we embrace something and then it's like, who are you the next day? But
Yeah.
you're right. Statistics don't lie on this. And when you saw the statistics come out about the viewing, that's extraordinary. They're absolutely extraordinary. And I'm hoping that would be something you can follow up on. I'll be honest with you. I prefer watching the women's game than I do the men's game, because I think, I don't know, there's a lot less theatrics involved in the women's game than the men's at the moment.
It's hard to disagree with you on that one. And they play a very end-to-end game, which is really entertaining. You watch some of those games, particularly the England one, even though we're on the kind of the wrong side of the scoreline, it was super entertaining for the neutral person to watch. There was plenty of goals, and they like to take risks, and it pays off. So I loved watching every game. It was super entertaining, and I think there's a fair few people that have been bitten by the bug of the women's game that hopefully we'll have as supporters forever now.
Yeah. All right, Ryan. Time has just about fled us. So thank you so much for coming on the pod and being recorded and telling us about Next Track. I really do appreciate it. But for now, we'll have to leave it there. But I do look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thanks so much for having me. This is really enjoyable, and love the pod. Keep doing what you do well. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Health and Safety Conversations with Tom Bourne. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy the rest of your week.